Welcome to today's training on Nurture Principle 2, The Environment Offers a Safe Base. So you'll recall that last year we did training with all members of staff within Scottish Borders about an introduction to nurturing approaches. And this year we're going to be looking in more depth at two of the nurture principles, starting today with Nurture Principle 2, and later in this year we're going to be looking at Nurture Principle 5, which is all behaviour is communication. So we're going to start today with a quick reminder of the 6 nurture principles that I'm sure you're already familiar with. These are the principles that underlie what it means to be nurturing. Within Scottish Borders, we aim to be nurturing in all that we do as individuals, within schools and establishments, within the community, and as a local authority. We want to be oozing nurture. We want to be nurturing and develop nurturing environments. The first nurture principle is that children's learning is understood developmentally. Number 2, the environment offers a safe base. Number 3, nurture is important for the development of well-being. Number 4, language is a vital means of communication. Number 5, all behaviour is communication. And number 6, transition is important in children's lives. And you can see quite clearly from the diagram how each of these principles overlap on each of the others. And today it's the environment offering a safe base that we're going to be focusing on. You may have seen this in other trainings or in the literature worded as the classroom offering a safe base, but we do want to be thinking today about the wider environment of our schools and establishments. So we want to be thinking about areas of schools such as the playground or the dining hall and what it means to feel safe there. And we also want to be thinking about different settings such as childminding or early years settings, as well as primary and secondary schools. And we welcome people today from all of these different backgrounds. So we have a quote here, which is one that you may well have seen before because it's used quite frequently in other trainings, but it is one that's really key to our training today because it really places you at the centre of this. You as individual practitioners, as adults, you have the power to be able to make the environment a safe place for children and young people. It's how you present and how you interact with children and young people that has the power to make the environment a safe place or otherwise. And so I'll just read this quote now. It says, "I have come to the frightening conclusion that I am the decisive element in the classroom. It is my personal approach that creates the climate. It is my daily mood that makes the weather. As a teacher, I possess tremendous power to make a child's life miserable or joyous. I can be a tool of torture or an instrument of inspiration. I can humble or humour, hurt or heal. In all sets, it is my response that decides whether a crisis will be exacerbated or de-escalated, a child humanised or dehumanised." So thinking about the aims of our session today, we want to first of all be thinking about what we mean by a safe base. So what is a safe base? What do we mean by that? And why is it important for children and young people? And as part of that, we're going to be thinking about what different aspects or ingredients make an environment a safe base. And those specific ingredients we're going to be thinking about are belonging, relationships, learning and curriculum, predictability, routine and structure, and emotional calm. All of these are ingredients which help to make an environment feel safe. And we're going to be exploring each of these in more detail. And then we're also going to be thinking as we go through about real practical ideas and suggestions. so that you can take away today something that you can actually do, that you can change, or that you can implement to help your school or setting feel more safe and more nurturing. And finally, we want to be considering what next steps um, are there for your school or for your setting, or of course for you as individual practitioners. So thinking about what is a safe base, what do we mean by a safe base? I'm sure you'll remember in our introductory nurture training last session that we thought quite a lot about children's attachments with the adults around them, and how those attachments develop, and how a sensitive and consistent response of an adult towards a child is really crucial to helping a child feel safe and secure in the world around them. So the idea of a secure base really fits with this. It was first described many years ago in the literature by Ainsworth, who at that time looked at infant and mother attachment. And Ainsworth said that a secure base, rather than being a physical place or the makeup of a physical environment, the secure base was actually provided through close relationship between a child and a sensitive and responsive adult, or adults who really meet the child's needs and to whom the child can turn to as a safe haven if they're upset or anxious. And Ainsworth found that when children develop trust that adults are going to be available and reliable, then their anxiety is reduced, and from there they can explore and enjoy the world more independently, and they can feel safe that they know that they can return to the adult for help if they need to. So in other words, it is actually the emotional connection between the adult and the child that is the secure base. And it's through this connection that the child will develop deeper connection with their physical environment. Today, when we're thinking about the learning environment or the school environment as a safe base, the importance that Ainsworth placed on the relationships between the child and the adult is no less important. So even though we're not looking necessarily at infants, we're looking at children and young people right through to secondary age, relationship still is vital and is central to the environment being a safe base. Nurturing adult-child relationships are what will help children to feel safe within school. However, there is more to thinking about the environment as a safe base than just relationships. And as you've seen already within the AIMS section, as we're moving through today, we're going to be looking at lots of different ingredients that make up a safe base, a safe environment for children and young people. But I think it's quite right at the outset that we highlight the importance of relationship, which is vital to all of this. But today we will be thinking about how schools and establishments can offer experiences that are rooted in feelings of emotional security, which means safety and protection from psychological or emotional harm. Experiencing school as a place that feels safe emotionally will be particularly important for those children or young people who have not had that sense of psychological safety at home. So those who we've thought about often as we've journeyed through our nurture training, those who have had insecure attachments with caregivers at home, those who have been traumatized or feel unsafe. For those children and young people, it's even more important that schools are experienced as safe bases. So here we have a different definition of a safe base. This is by Holy and Steiner, and I think this is really helpful in thinking about what it means for our school environments to feel safe psychologically for children and young people to explore who they are, to be able to express their individuality, to think about issues of identity, to be able to express their thoughts and feelings with one another, and to feel safe to be able to do so. So Holy and Steiner say that a safe base is a climate that allows students to feel secure enough to take risks, to honestly express their views, and share and explore their knowledge, attitudes, and behaviours. So again, this is just really thinking, how can we create an environment where children and young people feel safe to be who they are, to be able to express their individuality, even if that differs dramatically from cultural norms or norms set by the teacher or by the other students. How can we create an environment that's psychologically safe for young people to explore who they are and become who they want to be? So here we have a short video that we're going to show of a lady called Denna Simmons, who's describing what it means for her classroom to be a safe base.
It is possible to create emotionally and physically safe classrooms where students also thrive academically. I know because I did it in my classroom when I returned to teach in the Bronx. So what did that look like? I centered my instruction on the lives, histories, and identities of my students. And I did all of this because I wanted my students to know that everyone around them was supporting them to be their best self. So while I could not control the instability of their homes, the uncertainty of their next meal, or the loud neighbors that kept them from sleep, I provided them with a loving classroom that made them feel proud of who they are, that made them know that they mattered.
So why is a safe base important? Well, studies have shown that school environments where students feel safe, where they feel cared for, such environments can actually have a long-term positive impact on their well-being. It can help them through really vulnerable times when they're exploring their identity and sense of self. And it can also help to shape how they manage their relationships and their ability to function and adjust and cope when difficulties arise. So it can really help positively with young people's well-being. It can help to give them a sense of optimism. It can help promote self-efficacy, self-esteem, self-concept and sociability. So really a safe environment at school can have lasting impact. And here is a quote from a social psychologist who says, "The work that we do in school, particularly in terms of making students feel more connected, feel safer, feel like the adults around them care about them and want to see them succeed, that has impacts well into adulthood." So as well as the positive impact on well-being, a safe base is also linked to better academic performance and achievement within school. And I think this is really important to think about because I know that there can sometimes be tension for school staff where on one hand, they really want to invest time and energy into providing a more nurturing environment, but then at the very same time, they feel pressure to deliver the curriculum and to meet attainment targets. I think this might be particularly the case for secondary schools, and for some of you who are subject teachers that may only see pupils once or twice a week, or actually the time that you have is really restricted, and you have a curriculum that you need to deliver and targets that you need to try to meet, and that is really understandable and it's very difficult. But one thing that is really crucial to state is that we know without a doubt that for people to learn, they must be in a place where they feel comfortable and safe. So that's the case for children and young people and for adults as well. If we're feeling unsafe or uncomfortable, it can really impede our learning. And so it's vital to invest in nurture as much in secondary as in primary or nursery schools. Really, if we want to help young people learn to their potential, we must first and foremost provide an environment where they feel safe. There was a study of students' perspectives where they were asked to think about classrooms where they felt safe compared to classrooms where they didn't feel as safe, and to really think about what was different about the learning experiences there. And the outcome of that study was students felt that feelings of safety within the class changed both the quantity and the quality of what they learned. So they felt that they learned more when they were in a classroom where they felt safe, but also that the quality of the learning was tangibly different. When asked to say a little bit more about that, what was it that was different about what they learned in classrooms where they were feeling safe? They were saying that that was very much around hearing the perspectives of other people. So in a safe classroom environment, they were able to share their own views and to learn about others' views, to be able to share ideas, perspectives and thoughts, and really to be able to challenge and expand their viewpoints. So another aspect of why a safe base is important is to do with these young people who are coming into school with real problems and challenges and perhaps trauma from outside school, from their home environment, where they're coming into school just really not in an emotionally sound state to be starting to learn. And sometimes we might know nothing or very little about what is going on for these children and young people out of school. And it can be really, really challenging for them just to come in and to start to learn without us first helping to calm and soothe what's going on within them. And so it's vital for them that we create a safe environment where, first of all, we can address what is going on within them, so then they can begin to be in a place to learn. So children might arrive in school in a survival or in an emotional state where they're really unable to learn well. So a survival state is when we feel triggered by a real or a perceived threat. And if we are in that sort of state, the only skills we can really access are fight, flight, or freeze. So you might see children in the survival state shutting down or possibly becoming physically aggressive. And when they're in that survival state, it's really asking the question, am I safe? The emotional state is our response to upset. And children who are in the emotional state might be verbally aggressive and unable to access higher level skills and really struggling to see things from another's point of view. So the emotional state is really asking the question, am I loved? The survival state is really only soothed by safety, and the emotional state is really only soothed by connection with others. If they're in a survival or an emotional state when they come into school, children are unable to learn well. However, when they feel a sense of safety and connection, they are able to then relax enough to learn and to thrive. Creating a classroom that feels safe can help all pupils succeed. So it really helps level the playing field for students who have experienced trauma or for those with stressful home lives. It helps to create an environment where they have every chance of succeeding as much chance of succeeding as other children and young people. And really what this slide is saying is that we could provide the world's best teaching and give our young people the ultimate academic resources, but still only see mediocre results in terms of their learning. Before we can teach our students effectively, we must create a classroom that's built on a foundation of safety and connection. So we're now going to go into some breakout rooms and to have an activity within smaller groups where you have a chance to really think things through and discuss with one another ways of supporting children and young people who come into your classroom, either are in that emotional am I loved state or in that survival am I safe state. And what we'd like you to do in your small breakout groups is to talk about what you can do to help support these children to feel safe, connected and ready to learn. So we're going to put you into breakout rooms now. When you are in your breakout rooms, you won't have access to this slide. So before you go into your groups, if you could please just record this slide in whatever way you want. Take a photo on your mobile phone or take a screenshot or just jot it down with pen and paper, just so that you know what the task is when you get into your groups. What we would like you to do during or just towards the end of your discussion in groups is to put 3 key thoughts from your group into the chat function of Teams to be able to share with the other groups, with all of us here today. So we won't have a plenary session for you to feed back, but we would really like each group to put 3 key thoughts into the chat function. Well, welcome back. I hope that was a positive experience for all of you within your breakout rooms and was a good activity to think about. We're now going to move on to be thinking about what the different ingredients are that make up a safe base. So what is it that makes a safe base? And we touched upon these at the start when we were thinking about the aims of today's session, but just to recap on the different things we're going to now be looking at. So we're going to be thinking about belonging and the importance of a sense of belonging in terms of how safe or otherwise an environment feels. We're going to be thinking about relationships, and right from the start of today, we've been thinking about the importance of the adults and adult-child relationships, but we're also going to be thinking about the importance of relationships with peers as well. We're going to be thinking about the teaching, learning and assessment that takes place within schools and what we can do to make that feel safer for our children and young people. We're going to be thinking about the importance of predictability, routine and structure within the classroom, as well as a sense of emotional calm. So we're going to take each of these ingredients now in turn and just think a bit more in detail, both about the theory, but also about what practically you can be doing within your schools and settings in each of these areas. So the first ingredient that we're going to look at today is around the sense of belonging. Belonging is a need that we all have. Each of us needs to feel that we belong and that we're wanted and we're important to those around us. And that's exactly the same as for children and young people within our schools. This quote defines belonging in educational environments as students' sense of being accepted, valued, included, and encouraged by others, the teachers and peers, in the academic classroom setting, and of feeling oneself to be an important part of the life and activity of the class. More than simple perceived liking or warmth, it also involves support and respect for personal autonomy and for the student as an individual. So a sense of belonging within the school has been linked to positive psychological outcomes, including positive emotions, feelings of self-worth and social acceptance. More broadly, Maslow found that when we have proper, adequate and timely satisfaction of our need for belonging, that this leads to physical, emotional, behavioural and mental well-being. So just like we saw earlier when we were thinking generally about the importance of having our schools as safe environments and how that links to long-term positive well-being, a sense of belonging specifically has that same outcome. And similarly, again, a sense of belonging also impacts on a child's academic performance and motivation. So research has shown that when a child or young person feels like they belong in their school, they're more likely to see the value of the work that's required of them, and they're more likely to have a higher self-belief in their chances to succeed. On the other hand, students who don't feel like they belong to their school, they're more likely to skip school or to behave in ways that are not conducive to good learning and to successful academic outcomes. They're also more likely to leave school early. And that's found to be especially important for the performance of adolescents who come from ethnic minorities or from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. So there are different ways that we can try to foster a sense of belonging among the children and young people in our schools. And I'm sure that many of these are things that you're already doing, but it's worth mentioning again anyway. So it's ensuring that the school feels welcoming to everyone. It's thinking about small things such as the friendly tone of voice of the receptionist on the other end of a phone line, to school staff being visible within the playground, welcoming the children in the mornings and being there for parents. Displaying photographs on the wall or the school website of children involved in activities. As the adults, you shouldn't feel afraid to share some of who you are, really whatever you feel comfortable with in terms of sharing about your own life or your interests or your families. Because in doing so, that can just help to make connections with the children and young people. Although it's too late perhaps for this session, in future you might want to think about writing to the children individually before the school goes back so that you can introduce yourself and say that you're looking forward to meeting with them. Think about involving parents in school life. In terms of the sense of belonging, what we know is that when parents are feeling positive about the school and speak positively at home about school, that can increase that sense of belonging in their children. Whereas parents who are perhaps more negative about school and grumble about school and have maybe had negative experiences in school life themselves, their children are going to struggle more in terms of feeling that sense of belonging. And so think about how to foster a sense of belonging among the parents in the school community as well as with the children. So all of these are really ways that you might want to build that sense of belonging. But by far the most powerful thing is through positive relationships. And that's what we're going to think about further now. So we've been speaking already quite a bit about the adult-child relationships within nurturing approaches and how we want to try to get those right. And we're going to be thinking a bit more about that just now. We're also going to be thinking about peer relationships, because we know that the relationships a child has with other children around them can have a really big impact on their sense of safety within school. But just so that we don't overlook it, we want to mention about relationships between adults and one another within school, because these relationships can serve as a model to children of what healthy, respectful relationships look like. And when there are healthy relationships within between all of the adults within a school setting, that can have an impact on the overall climate of the school and can really help children's sense of safety. While we're talking about relationships, it's important to mention, just for children who have experienced trauma, that recovery will occur best within the context of healing relationships. And these healing relationships may well be with adults in school. We know of a young person in our area who has experienced terrible trauma and lack of safety at home throughout his life. And when he was asked recently who he feels loves him, he responded straight away by naming his school teacher first of all. And this particular teacher had been working very hard to help this child feel safe and to feel loved and wanted and valued. And that clearly had had an impact. And for children who don't have that sense of being loved and valued and wanted from home, it's even more important that we can try to provide that within our schools. But it should be for all children. This is what we really should be aiming to do for every child that we come into contact with. So there are many things that we can be doing to try to develop positive, connected relationships with the children that we work with. And I'm sure that many of these are things that you're already doing routinely, but there's no harm in revisiting them and mentioning them again. So the first thing is just to learn people's names and to address them by name, and try to use their name positively and with warmth. Listen to the children, young people, and learn about them as individuals. So show an interest in them and their hobbies and their interests. Show that you care about them. Ask how their football game went over the weekend, or what inspired their latest art project, or if they've seen the sequel to their favourite movie. Just find what their interests are and show that you care about them. So encourage your pupils, even just for small successes. So notice their effort and their improvement, their kindness, their helpfulness. Try to give them specific praise, which can help them to feel valued. Notice just even small things. And it's vital to respond to difficult or distressed behaviours with empathy and compassion. Try not to take their behaviours personally. We're going to think more when we cover Nurture Principle 5 later in the year about how all behaviour is communicating something. And when children are distressed, they are communicating something to us. Equally, we will communicate back to them through our behaviour. So we want to try to be gentle and compassionate and understanding. And that can be hard, especially at times if the child is displaying quite angry or aggressive behaviour. But what you communicate back to the child about your feelings towards them will influence their future relationship with you. So we're going to see another video now, which is just a short video looking at something called micro affirmations. worry if some of that video seemed to pass really quickly and you weren't able to read all of the information, because we're going to look at microaffirmations a little bit more now, and to see the importance of them. So really, microaffirmations are small acknowledgements of the other person's value and worth, on a spectrum where microaggressions are small ways of undermining other people and putting them down. Microaffirmations are small ways of building them up and affirming them. And there's very practical ways that you can do that in every interaction that you have. And most teachers, I think, already do promote these positive interactions, but perhaps don't realise it, or don't realise the impact that it can have. So some ways of affirming others, some ways of using microaffirmations in your everyday interactions, through nodding and eye contact. So when a child's talking to you, being attentive to them, looking at them, making eye contact, nodding, really listening to what they're saying. Calling on all students equally. So when within your classroom, making sure that you don't discriminate in any way by race or by gender in terms of how often you're interacting with different children. Using inclusive language, that can be as simple as talking about families instead of parents, for example. Trying to stay enthusiastic in all of your interactions with children and young people. Active listening. So this goes along with the nodding and eye contact, where you're focusing clearly, you're focusing on hearing clearly what is being said by a child or young person, and you're reinforcing what they're saying through your body language, through your eye contact, through your summarizing statements and questions that you might use to show your understanding and confirm your understanding. Affirming a child's emotions. So if a child discusses an experience with you, either positive or negative, try to acknowledge what they're saying and validate what they're saying, and validate their feelings regarding their experience. And it may be that you don't necessarily agree with the way that they're feeling about something, but it's important that you do validate how they are feeling about it, and that you are genuine in that. You might want to use statements such as, "I appreciate this is frustrating," or "I can see you're really excited by this opportunity." If it's a challenging experience that they're describing to you, validate their feelings, but try to guide them towards a perspective that's more productive in terms of their experience, and try to empathize with young people. And it's important that empathy isn't just seen as something that happens when the child's experienced something negative, but that also there's such a thing as empathetic joy, so that you can share in their joy, you can celebrate with them when they are happy about something. And recognizing and validating their experience. So again, it doesn't mean you necessarily have to agree with how they interpreted the experience, but make it clear that you understand how they're seeing things, and help them to consider ways of dealing with it productively. And you can do that through your verbal and body language cues that really show that you care about what they're saying and that you're interested in helping them. All of these are examples of microaffirmations that can be used in every interaction that you have with the children in your class, and they can have a really big impact on the climate within the classroom. And here's just a quote from a behavioural psychologist who did a lot of research into microaffirmations. And what he said is that focusing on micro affirmations can create a virtuous cycle. So over time, they can define the normative behaviour in a classroom or in a school, not only to avoid exclusion and insult, but also to embrace inclusion and affirmation. So now we just have some other ideas, other ways of helping to build connected relationships between yourselves and the children that you work with. Giving children meaningful jobs that allow them to be of service to others, that can really help them to feel trusted and valued by adults if they are given the opportunity to make meaningful contributions to their school. Providing pupils with choices can also help to develop positive and respectful relationships. So give them choices on activities or assignments or rules within class. Ensure that young people in your school don't feel judged. Children and young people should know that the staff are there to help them to be successful and want the very best for them. And they should feel comfortable being able to ask questions and to make mistakes and to tackle challenging assignments, knowing that you're there to support them and that your responses to them are always affirming and are safe and not judging. And laughing with your students, having humour is a great way to build bonds and to put your students at ease. So as well as these connected adult to child relationships, we do need to really think about peer relationships and to recognise how important they are in terms of helping a child to feel safe or indeed unsafe within the school environment. Peer groups really do matter and can have a big impact, make a huge difference to a child or young person's experience of school. Probably many of us will be able to think of times ourselves when we were at school where having a buddy alongside us actually really made a big difference to us. And for me, I think it was just even starting high school, knowing that I had two people that I knew from primary school who were going to be in the same class as me at high school, that I could follow around the building in case I got lost, or that were just there beside me. And they weren't even close friends of mine, but they were just peers that I knew, and I found a lot of reassurance and security in that. And I'm sure many of us will be able to relate to that. Peers really are important, and having a trusted peer beside us helps us to feel safe. So how can we foster safe peer relationships? One thing is just to try to integrate as many social elements into the learning activities as possible. So trying to create opportunities where children and young people can work together and can support and encourage each other to learn. Creating opportunities for collaboration between students, and nurturing and supporting friendships that we can identify that are already organically developing. Nursery or primary schools might want to share information with parents about emergent friendships that they can see, so parents can support those friendships outside school. There's lots there that we can do to try to nurture and support friendships. So when peer relationships go well, they can help children to feel safe in school. But sadly, the opposite is also true. So when peer relationships go wrong, children may feel very unsafe within school as a result. And we know that unhealthy peer relationships can have a long-term negative impact on well-being. Students of all ages can fear rejection from their peers, and that sort of fear can be pervasive and intrusive and really impact on their learning and impact on their experiences of school. So what can we do to try to help this situation? Well, First of all, creating inclusive school contexts where children feel like they belong. We've spoken a lot about belonging already, and trying to create a school that is welcoming, where the children and young people feel a sense of belonging. That can help to reduce their fear of peer rejection. We want to gently challenge prejudice of any kind that we see or hear within school. So we really want to give the message continually that everyone is unique, and we want to empower the children to have individuality and to encourage them to be proud of what makes them an individual. We want to give children opportunities to voice their opinions, encourage them to listen to other people's views, and challenge any kind of prejudice that we hear. We want to be actively teaching children to treat each other with kindness and respect. And as part of that, we want to be a positive role model, and we want to model respect for individual differences. We want to model respect, care for one another, patience with one another, and positive interactions. One thing to mention briefly just now is the issue of cyberbullying, which can happen outside of school, but which can have an impact on how a child feels coming into school and on their sense of safety. So it's important that we understand the impact of cyberbullying and that we look out for it. So cyberbullying is when social media or technology such as phones are used to bully or to target individuals or an individual. And what we want to do is to be asking students to report it, and any bystanders who are aware of it, even if they're not actively involved, we want to encourage them to speak up. Peter Bradley, who's the director of the children's charity Kidscape, speaks about cyberbullying and said that the key to solving this is teaching empathy. So it's helping young people to realise that the cyber world is part of the real world, and helping them to develop empathy for others and to realise that there's an impact to their actions online. So we've now thought about the sense of belonging and the importance of connected relationships as two ingredients of creating a safe environment. And now we're going to think about another ingredient, which is to do with the teaching, learning and assessment activities that take place within schools. And it's important that we recognise that these learning opportunities can impact considerably on a child's sense of safety within the school. So learning activities may feel stressful or threatening and fearful to some students. That might be because of the work that feels too difficult, or it might be because of a threat of being exposed in front of their peers, or a fear of making mistakes. It's just important to emphasise at this point that being safe is not the same as being comfortable. So in order to grow and to learn, students must confront issues that make them feel uncomfortable and force them to struggle with who they are and what they believe. So there will be times in school that young people feel uncomfortable as they take on new challenges, as they confront fears, as they learn new things which are out with their comfort zone. The thing is that we want to help them to feel psychologically safe within this, so that they know that they can take risks and try new things, that it's okay to make mistakes or to not succeed straight away. So they are safe to go out with their comfort zone and know that they won't be embarrassed or shamed or punished for their opinions or their efforts. So we're going to put you into breakout rooms again to give you the chance to chat with others and to think about the issues to do with feeling safe within the school curriculum. So we're going to ask you to imagine yourself in a scenario. Imagine you're in school one day and your head teacher approaches you to inform you that HMIE have arrived at the school unexpectedly. They are having a meeting in the assembly hall at lunchtime that day with all school staff present, as well as the parent and pupil councils. The head teacher would like you to do a 30-minute presentation on developments your school have made in nurturing approaches. You are teaching now and so have no time to prepare and no other information about what is required. So in your breakout groups, we would like you to discuss how you feel going into the assembly hall. What impact might those feelings have on your ability to do this presentation? What might help? What might you need to help you feel safe in that environment? And how might this relate to children in your class? Again, you won't have access to this slide when you're in your group, so if you could please just take a quick screenshot or photo on your phone so that you have access to that. And again, it would be great if you could please put some comments into the chat to share with one another. So I hope you found that activity useful and thought-provoking, and you've been able to pop some ideas into the chat. We're going to have a think now about learning, teaching and assessment within our schools and what we can be doing to try to help children and young people to feel safer within their learning. We're going to start just with a quote here from a dyslexic pupil who was talking about what good teachers do. And the quote says, "They notice when you're having problems and they don't dismiss you by ignoring you and your questions. When I am stuck, I know I can put up my hand and not get shouted at for not listening. The teacher smiles at me and then explains again, doing at least 2 examples with me." So there are many teaching approaches that can be used to help support children and young people and to help them to feel safe within their learning. First of all, know the needs of your learners and provide differentiated work at the right level for them so that they can experience success. Provide choices and control for them. Give students input on activities, assignments, rules of the class. Create a culture based on growth mindset where it is okay to make mistakes and in fact essential for learning and growth. You can gently encourage but never insist on children answering or reading out loud. Think about your seating arrangements and allow those more vulnerable learners to be near trusted peers. And think about groupings for collaborative work to ensure that children feel safe. So if you know that someone needs extra support or understanding, then put them with the right teammates, put them with other children who you know will help them and support them. So here is a quote from Mike Johnson from the British Dyslexia Association. And he says that overall, it is clear that these pupils, meaning pupils with dyslexia, have no difficulty recognising the learning environment in which they can succeed. It is interesting that the underlying theme is the emotional climate in the classroom rather than any specific techniques or special methodology. They want calmness and security, the feeling that teachers might actually like them and are enthusiastic about their subject, quiet recognition of their difference, and the provision of 2 key structures, differentiation and support. So another ingredient of the environment as a safe base is through the predictability, routine and structure of the classroom. It is very important that a nurturing classroom environment is orderly and well organised, and that there are clear expectations and frequent reminders of these. It is a common myth, I think, within schools that somehow nurturing classrooms are free from rules or boundaries, that children are free to do as they please. And this is totally untrue because children very much need boundaries and clear expectations in order to feel safe. It may be that you find if you have a traumatized or attachment disrupted child that they have difficulty accepting the boundaries and accepting limits, and that they can also feel quite intense shame when you try to discipline them and remind them of the boundaries. And it's important that if you do have children who are experiencing things in that way, that you respond with calm and with compassion. But it's nevertheless vital that those rules and boundaries and expectations are in place. Nurturing classrooms should have a planned routine so that there's a predictable and reliable structure to the day, and that helps children to feel safe. As part of that, communicate the daily activities clearly so that the young people know what to expect. Visual timetables can be effective with that. And explain any changes to the routine gently and with empathy and reassurance. So be aware of the support needs of specific young people in your class. So young people with autistic spectrum disorder or with anxiety around change may well need some extra reassurance and support to deal with any sudden changes that need to happen. And try wherever possible to have consistent seating arrangements. And again, take time to explain any changes to help children feel secure within that. Keeping an emotionally calm environment is the final ingredient that we're going to think about today. So this is another factor in helping our children to feel safe within school and in our schools being safe bases. And there are many strategies that you can use to try to keep that sense of emotional calm. And these are strategies that I'm sure you're already aware of, but I think it's worth reminding ourselves just now. So understanding our students, having a clear knowledge and awareness of a child's history, of their life story and background, can help us to understand possible reasons for their behaviours, which can be very helpful for us in supporting them to regulate their emotions. It is also helpful in our understanding of children to be able to then quickly identify possible triggers and proactively manage situations. And knowing our children well in that respect can help them to feel understood and to feel valued, which in turn helps them to feel safe and calm. We want to try to respond with empathy when children are feeling distressed or are in a heightened state of emotion. If we respond with empathy and compassion, that communicates to the child that we are for them and are there to help them, and that can help them again to feel safe and calm. And alongside that, it's important, in order to respond with empathy, that we manage our own emotional reactions. It's only natural that at times we can feel angry or we can feel hurt or rejected by an interaction with a child, but it's very important to try to remain calm and to avoid power battles. So if we feel that we are becoming angry or upset, then taking a step away just to calm ourselves before we then come back to the interaction is really helpful. And that way we can respond carefully and we can consider how we want to respond instead of reacting impulsively. How we manage our own emotional arousal and regulation is vital to us being able to assist the child and maintain a peaceful classroom. And the role of us as adults in containing a child's emotion is really important in helping them to feel safe. So do talk about emotions in your daily interactions with children and young people. Talk about your own feelings, inquire about their feelings, and try to help to give them a vocabulary of emotional understanding that will help them to be able to understand and express their own feelings. Often when children become angry, they're not angry at a particular thing. It may be that something has triggered a deep feeling within them, such as shame or fear or sadness, and that has led to them becoming dysregulated. So, in these situations, if you ask why they are angry, often they won't know and they won't be able to tell you, and it's not so helpful a question. So if you are aware of a child becoming dysregulated, instead of asking them why, try getting alongside them and helping them with what it is that they're trying to do. And you may want to say, I see you need help with cleaning up, or I see you need help with not kicking that chair, and get alongside them to help them with that. Alongside that is just thinking about the language that you use within the classroom and trying to keep that safe language. So, warnings, for example, warnings and second chances are not very helpful in terms of maintaining that sense of connectedness between yourself and the child or young person. So, saying to them, for example, unless you do that, you will have to go to management, or unless you stop doing that, I'll need you to go outside the classroom, then that sort of language doesn't feel very safe and may risk breaking that sense of connection between yourselves. Whereas getting alongside them and saying, I see you need help with that, and then helping them to comply with what you're asking of them can be a way of building a stronger relationship. Alongside that is this notion of time in rather than time out. So when a child is distressed, they may be disrupting your class, and it may be that you want to ask them to leave the classroom for a bit of time out. However, we need to really be aware that in doing so, we may inadvertently replicate feelings of rejection within that child that they have experienced in the past, and it may also reinforce their idea of themselves as being unlovable and needing to be removed. So try, instead of asking them to take time out, that they actually come closer to you for time in. So try, for example, to get them to come and work closer to you at your desk, or you draw closer to them to help them. Try where you can to reframe what you're seeing. Instead of saying that it's disruption, try to see it as a need for some extra attention and help, and try to give them that. Alongside that is the idea of keeping a close physical presence so that they can feel a sense of security and safety with you being there for them. I know that this isn't always an easy one, and it's maybe a tricky thing that you need to use judgment for based on the individual circumstance, because some children or young people might actually push you away or might feel threatened by you being too close within their space physically. However, it's still really important that they know that you are there for them, and that they can see you and know that you are there to give them support. So that might be, for example, just walking alongside them to help them to calm down, or keeping close beside them. So now if we go back to look at the aims of today's session again, I hope we've been able to cover all of these. So we've thought about what a safe base is, why it is important, and what different ingredients make up the safe base. And we've also given some practical ideas about how to create a classroom and setting and environment where children feel safe and nurtured. Now we want to think about what this means for you as a practitioner and for your school or setting. What are the next steps in your journey? So when we're thinking about what our next steps are in developing our own practice in this area, we want to remember that nurturing approaches are an integral and essential part of Scottish Borders Council's inclusion framework, and as such, we do have a responsibility to act on this training and to actively develop nurture within our schools. The inclusion framework is in place in order to create a culture of ethos and inclusion in Scottish Borders, and it complies with national and local legislation. So it is vital that schools and school leaders uphold the principles within this framework, and inclusion principles, including nurture, must be visible in our practice and inform everything that we do. Elements of the inclusion framework, including nurture, should be consistently reflected throughout the policy, planning, procedure and professional development at all levels and across all staff and partners. So we're really emphasising this just now, just as a reminder that we all have a duty to act upon today's training. So that just leads us to these final questions, which is really about what we want to change now. So what changes are important for your school or establishment? What might you want to try as an individual practitioner? And what is the next step that you want to take? These are really questions not for right now, but for you to take away and reflect upon and then discuss in your school or cluster groups. So very finally, just a quote to leave you with, which is quite a powerful, hard-hitting quote. When you see students not learning and not improving, or when you see students exhibiting the same behaviours over and over again, ask yourself, have I given them safety and connection? All students need to feel safe and loved, but some may need a little extra.